Welcome, everyone. This is Amanda Fuller from the Kentucky Academy of Science. Thank you for joining us today. We are doing a training for scientists about how to do a podcast, how to get your science on either the radio or on a podcast recording. And we're very excited to offer this program as a training for our members and for anybody else who happens to find us and is tuning in today. If you're watching the recording, thank you for being here. Kentucky Academy of Science is a scientific association serving the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We have about 4,000 members all the way across the state from, I always say, Paducah to Pikeville and every corner in between. We are a multidisciplinary society encompassing life sciences, physical sciences, social sciences, students, undergraduates, high school students, teachers, faculty members, professionals in all disciplines. So one of the services that we love to offer is to be able to do professional development with our scientists so they can do their job better and have a greater impact here in Kentucky. So you can find more information about us at kyscience.org. You can find a calendar of events, future trainings, past trainings, funding opportunities, all sorts of things. So go there, become a member if you're interested at kyscience.org. One of the awesome things that we do is science communication work, and we were delighted to hire on Melissa Doherty as our science communication specialist about a year ago. So I'm going to turn it over to her. She's really our champion, and I want her to tell us more about the work that she's doing.
Thanks, Amanda. As Amanda said, we do serve all of Kentucky, and one of the things that we want to do with the work of the Kentucky Academy of Science is to share the science that's happening in the Commonwealth with those of us in the state and outside of the state. And one of the important things that we do as scientists is share our work, and that's how science continues to grow and evolve. And so my job with the Kentucky Academy of Science is to communicate our work in a multifaceted set of ways. And so we have newsletter work and social media posts that we share out and community outreach and education resources. And one of the things that KAS is involved in and that you're here for today is the podcast Bench Talk. The Week in Science is published by Davie Robinson, who's going to be sharing with us today more on how do you create content for a podcast. And our goal is that you all watching this would take an interest in sharing your science or share the work that you see happening around you so that we can continue to reach a broader audience and inform the greater community about the amazing work that's happening right here in the Commonwealth. So Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Let's see. Oh, sharing is not turned on.
Sorry about that. Try it now.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, there it is. And then, good. Can you see that all right?
Perfect. Thank you.
And you can hear me good. Yeah, thank you. Um, thanks a lot to Melissa and Amanda for inviting me to do this. I'm a retired professor. My training is in plant physiology, but I've always been interested in science communication. Like a couple decades ago, I wrote a couple magazine articles. I did a podcast like 15 years ago that's had like 8,000 hits. But in 2018, I found this opportunity to to develop my own radio show. And I grabbed it. It's for a small community radio station here in Louisville, Kentucky. It's a low power station, but it still impacts most of the city. And then everything that's on that radio show is also podcasted on iTunes. And so I've been doing it for 6.5 years now. And I think it's really important for scientists to communicate with the public. And so my goal today is just tell you a little bit about the ins and outs of that. So why do we need podcasts about science? Well, first of all, I guess people don't read as much as they used to, but podcasts are becoming really popular as a way of communicating. And I think it's because you can multitask while you podcast. You can walk your dog, ride your bike. Well, that's dangerous, but do your dishes, do your laundry, even drive if you can set the remote control right. And so you can multitask and listen to podcasts. Something like almost half of Americans listened to a podcast last month, and a third of Americans listen to podcasts every week. I think this is a good way to fight stereotypes about science. People think that science is too hard for them to understand, or that it's boring, or that it's irrelevant, and it's really none of those things. That's one of our goals with the show. I think it helps put a human face on science. You know, 1 out of 4 Americans doesn't even trust scientists anymore. And that number has gotten really large since the pandemic. And so scientists need to communicate with the general public. There's a lot of misconceptions and conspiracy theories and politicization of science that maybe we can dispel. Think about the measles vaccine, the COVID vaccine, evolution, climate change, um, um, fluoridation of water. And are there really only two genders in humans? Is it only male or female, or are there other sexes out there? A lot of controversy about these things. And so scientists can do good by getting involved with it. So we can inform the public and maybe encourage public awareness and action, like with climate change, and possibly persuade policy decisions by government. And even if you don't do all that big stuff, you might encourage one-on-one people to use more evidence-based critical thinking when they're thinking about controversial topics. It might encourage participation in citizen science projects. We've reported on a couple of them. Actually, Mary Williams, who's in on this call, did a couple stories on that. We might be encouraging young people to pursue careers in science. And then on a personal level, it's a great way to build your understanding of your own discipline, or maybe another discipline. It really forces me to keep updated on latest advances, and I find that really stimulating. It's a great challenge how to explain something complicated without sensationalizing it to grab eyeballs or ears, but then on the other hand, how not to dumb it down too much and still make it accurate. And then if you are in academia, few people here are, um, it does count as community service for rank and tenure committees. And it also depends on your institution, but it's a type of scholarship. If they follow the Boyer model of scholarship, I think it's called the Scholarship of Integration. And I serve as the peer reviewer um, of all the stories that are submitted to the show by other people. I review it, so I am consider myself a peer reviewer, which is important for rank and tenure committees. Yeah, this was an amazing fact. 184,000 new podcasts are thought to have started last year around the globe. That's a huge number. Now, the average podcast only lasts 6 months. And so it's hard for them to keep track of this number. But a lot of people are interested in podcasting. And even if I found this, I'd recommend this website if you're interested in just starting your own podcast. I will say it's really fun. It's a really interesting challenge. So this is a great website to go to. But basically, to summarize what they say on that website, how to publish your own podcast. You produce a few episodes. If it's a half-hour show or an hour show, yeah, you've got to decide that. Go ahead, record a few, and then you need to post them in what they call an RSS feed, which stands for Real Simple Syndication. You've got to syndicate it. I use SoundCloud as the server. That's basically where you post the podcast. And then from there, you have to link it to a feed that's really popular, like iTunes or Spotify. And so you post the new podcasts SoundCloud, and then the iTunes will automatically pick it up whenever you post a new episode. And then your only job is not the only job, but just maintain your commitment. If you're going to have a weekly show, you've got to keep making episodes every week. I've now reverted to 2 episodes a month. So I was going to focus on covering this first thing. How do you produce these episodes of a podcast? Yeah, this is our podcast and / radio show, Bench Talk, the Week in Science. We have been on the air for 6.5 years, 220 episodes. So we've beat the odds. Like I say, half of podcasts, no, the average podcast ends in 6 months. So we're doing good. This is the radio station that the show plays on. It's Forward Radio here in Louisville, WFMP 106.5. And you can just pick, if you're in Louisville, just tune your dial on your radio to on your car to 106.5 and you'll get it. We're on 24 hours a day. It's a grassroots, volunteer run, listener supported community radio station, kind of like NPR, except NPR has a budget of about $6 million a year. Our budget is about $6,000 a year. We're just a small station. So my show, and then my show is broadcast live on the radio, but then it gets saved as a MP3 file, and then it gets podcasted on iTunes. It's a 29-minute show. It's broadcast weekly, so there's an episode every week. But just like NPR they'll play fresh air radio show a couple times a day, the same show a couple times a day. We broadcast every episode of ours 6 times, 3 times the first week and 3 times the second week, different times of the day, different days of the week. And that increases the odds of people catching it while they're driving around or walking the dog. It is a low power radio station, so we don't have the strength that other commercial stations have or NPR, but we do cover most of Louisville, Kentucky, and a good part of the edge of southern Indiana along the Ohio River. We've got a potential audience of at least 300,000 people. I think it's more than that, but they can listen to the show live on the radio. But it's also live streamed, and so we've got people logging into the station, live in Alaska, Arizona, other countries. And then we do have RSS feed that gets it streamed on iTunes and SoundCloud. How many people listen to the show? No one knows because we can't afford a Nielsen analysis, a Nielsen rating. But my wild guess is that there's about 500 people listening to the show as a whole. That doesn't mean they're tuning into our show. But I do have a hard data about how many people download the podcast. And since January 1st, the average has been 45 people. So maybe 100 people in all are listening to the show. And that's actually pretty good. Podbean produced an article. They said the average, if you have 30 downloads an episode, you're in the upper half of popularity. So we're way above 30. So at least we're in the upper half of popularity. And and I think we're impacting maybe 100 people, which we're not Joe Rogan or show or anything like that. But on the other hand, if somebody invited you to come to their neighborhood meeting and talk about science, and they said there were 100 people there, that's not bad. It's pretty good. This is our mission statement, bringing science to the people. It's a clearinghouse for research. We try to emphasize the newest research, but we do look backwards also. We do cover natural and social sciences and the other parts of STEM, technology, engineering, math, and then STEM education and policy. And we do try to involve the primary literature if we're talking about recent science advances. So it's basically a magazine format. It's a 29-minute show, but we'll have a 5-minute story here on something and a 10-minute story there on something else. The average length of each story is about 8 minutes, but they vary from two to our show this week is 27 minutes long, so we occupied the whole half hour. Um, and so I kind of piece it together into a magazine format, which is nice because hopefully we do have other contributors, and so the listener can listen to different voices, different perspectives, and that's what we're seeking um, today. Like maybe Wilson or Melissa Wilson, maybe you could talk about what you're doing this summer. But we're seeking a diverse group of collaborators to add their own perspectives, expertise, and styles from different disciplines, different areas of interest. Real fast, I'll introduce who has collaborated with us in the past. Scott Miller is our oldest collaborator. He started with the show like our second month on the air. Every month he reports what stars and planets you can see in the sky at night. He also does a little bit of physics story. Mary Williams, who's on this call, she has done some good stories on biographies of women in science that people don't know about. And also she's done some citizen science stories. Amanda Fuller, who's on this call, she's done some interviews, a lot of interviews with professors or undergraduates about research or education. Leslie Moise is a retired English professor, but occasionally I'll tell her, like one time I told her I'm doing a story about bears getting into, bears invading people's homes and neighborhoods. And she had an encounter with the bears. So she wrote a poem about bears. And so I was able to include that on the show. So instead of STEM, a lot of people now are advocating STEAM, add some art to STEM. Rob Weber has done a lot of interviews and a little bit of STEM policy. Mark Alsip is a new contributor. He has his own podcast, which is good. Check it out. It's called Bad Science Debunked. And he has submitted a few stories on that same topic, debunking bad science. Trent Garrison has done a lot of stories on local, the Kentucky legislature and what state, what bills that affect science are being discussed in the legislature. John Dixon has done a few STEM education stories, but also he's our graphic designer, so he produces these nice graphics. And I would say we've got 10 or 20 other people, everything from private citizens to undergraduates, graduate students, postdocs, professors who have contributed to the show. But we'd like to get more. All these people are working for free though, because we don't have commercials on the podcast. Our radio station is a nonprofit. Even NPR has more commercials than we do. And so we're not monetized, but on the other hand, the podcast is not interrupted by some obnoxious commercial. But we do all work for free. Keep that in mind. But my question to you all is, could you contribute to this show? Or maybe you know someone who would like to contribute. So we're inviting scientists and non-scientists to join us, and some things you could discuss: your own area of expertise, but also recent research publications outside of your expertise. It doesn't matter if it's basic research or applied. I'd like to have more stories looking backwards, science history or biographies of scientists that maybe people don't know about. You could discuss what's going on at science agencies like NASA or EPA or USDA, environment or sustainability stories, citizen science opportunities would be great, STEM education. I'd love to have some stories on science tourism, like talk about Mammoth Cave or Big Bone Lick or Falls of Ohio. And even people who are not, maybe people who are more on the creative side. Of course, you can't do visual art on the radio, but you could do music, you could do poetry, short stories, what have you. And we cover a wide range of disciplines, natural and social sciences, mathematics, technology, computers, engineering, anthropology, economics, and even political science and history. As long as it's evidence-based, I think that fits well in our show. And here's just some topics that we've covered in the past, certainly not all of them, but I won't read through them all, but you can see it's pretty diverse. Just whatever strikes me or other contributors, we make a story out of it. Like I say, the average story is 8 minutes or so, so we can put several stories in an episode. And it's always kind of fun to search for new topics. There's a lot of new topics out there. I try to stay away from ones that are really in the news a lot because other TV and radio is already covering them. Try to pick on topics that maybe people don't think they want to hear, but um, but I think they should hear. Like people, a lot of people are interested in dog breed identification because they're dog owners, but not everybody's interested in fecal transplants. But I think it's an interesting topic. And then we do cover social sciences too. And again, I won't read through them all, but you'll find they're pretty much all over the place. And then some science policy, not just at the, we've done stories even at the Louisville level, but more likely at the state level and national and international. I think scientists, we pride ourselves on our research being unbiased. And so on our show, I encourage contributors, and I always try to present multiple viewpoints on controversial issues. Now, I'm not saying if you're talking about climate change or evolution that you have to spend an equal amount of time on two sides of the story. But if you're talking about something like fluoridation of water, well, there is some research showing that fluoridated water can be dangerous to children if the levels are really high, like 2, 3 times the level that's actually in our water. So you can talk about the ins and outs of fluoridation and really show that um, the give multiple viewpoints. But on the other hand, you're the one who's knowledgeable. You're the one who's done the background reading, and so there's nothing wrong with voicing your opinion, which I'm doing more and more on the show. But we just have to be careful. The FCC, the Federal Communication Commission that controls us, gives us our license. They're very finicky about us telling people what to do because we're a nonprofit. So we can't tell people who to vote for. We can't tell people to contact your senator about such and such a bill. We can talk about the issue and we can talk about the bill, but people have to decide on their own about whether they're going to call their senator. Our shows are pre-recorded. We've never done a live show. And some contributors might be able to speak extemporaneously. If you're talking about something that's your discipline, or maybe you're a teacher and you just talked about this in class, you might just be able to record something extemporaneously off the top of your head. For me, I find there's too much content, there's too much detail, too many facts and figures, and I like it to be organized in my own way. And so I write a script ahead of time, actually, and then I'll read it, and I'll read it in such a way that it hopefully sounds like I'm not reading. It actually takes me more time to write the script than it does to record the story. And it's a different kind of writing. It's not the kind of writing that academics are used to, where you're writing grant proposals or um, papers for publication in a journal. It's a different kind of writing. You have to keep it real personal. So you pick a topic that you're interested in or you think people will be interested in, and it doesn't have to be cutting edge. Like I say, if it's something that's all over CNN that week, maybe we need to pick a different topic. It can be in your expertise, but I've actually never done a story on my own discipline, not my expertise anyway. I've always talked about recent publications or events outside my discipline. You have to write for a general audience. I basically assumed that they took high school science biology, chemistry, physics, math. And of course, their background's pretty weak. If they've been out of school for a long time, retention's pretty low of those kind of topics. And so if you're talking about atoms, yeah, remind them, there's these little atoms with neutrons and protons and electrons going around it. Or if you're talking about cells, remind them there's a plasma membrane, there's organelles in there and a nucleus and ribosomes. You just kind of have to remind people about what you're talking, but that doesn't take too long. You can get right into the topic pretty easily. I do like to study the original research article, but then I do look at journalistic interpretations of those articles. Whenever a scientist publishes a paper at a larger university, like a state university, their publicity office or PR office usually writes a press release. And so you can get those, and they have that's a nice source. I try to write in a casual conversational manner, so it's not so staid as an academic paper is, which means you got to define scientific terms and uncommon acronyms. I don't define EPA or DNA anymore, but if it's like VOC, volatile organic compounds, I'll remind them what a VOC is. And if it's a complicated concept, try to give a brief overview of it. I try to provide historical context or backstory, like what kind of research was done before this paper came out. I do try to include some data in there since science is pretty quantitative, but I round off though. So if something is 51.8% greater in the treatment, I'll just say 52%. Or I might just say a little bit more than half, so you keep it general. You don't have to get too many decimal points into it. This is something I'm still working on, is trying to be engaging and humorous and personable. That's a good way to get people to keep listening to the podcast, but it's challenging because I'm basically a shy person. Academic plagiarism rules apply, so we try to paraphrase what other people have written, put it in our own words, which is usually required anyway because you're trying to make it more conversational. But we do quote, but just make sure you tell people quote and then say it and then unquote, and acknowledge who that quote is. Although I'm getting more and more away from that. Instead of saying Dr. Joe Blow at NASA says, quote, I'll just say a scientist at NASA says. I don't think it's so important to necessarily acknowledge the exact person, or just say a co-author of the paper said. If you're writing a script and you're wondering how long is this thing, how long is this thing going to be? The general rule for me and other people I've noticed is we speak about 2 words a second. So if you have a script that's 960 words long, Word will tell you how many words it is when you highlight it. Divide it by 2, divide it by 60, 8 minutes. That's about an 8-minute story. And don't be surprised if your finished script ends up being a lot longer than you originally thought, because it takes time to give background and be pleasant and understandable. So my story this week is about the Bennu asteroid that a probe brought rocks back from. And I originally thought it was just going to be a 10-minute story. It ended up being 27 minutes. And then a lot of our contributors conduct interviews. You could interview a scientist, a professor, a graduate student, an undergraduate student, a teacher, what have you. Some tips on interviewing. I've done a few. You can interview in person. That's what I've done, where they literally come into my office, which is my studio, and I have a microphone and we share a microphone. You could do video conference. Even this meeting is being recorded. This could be, so there's going to be audio, and you could make a part of a show out of this. And then you could record a phone call. I only figured this out last night on an iPhone, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So you could talk to somebody on the phone and record that. If it's in person, Make sure the microphone is equally distant between the two people, because some people have, and if somebody has a real soft voice, you need to move it closer, or if it's a little loud voice, you need to move it away a little bit. I always let the guest know ahead of time that I'm going to edit the recording to remove blunders, and this is just to help them relax a little bit. I did a interview for a magazine, oh, like 15 years ago, and oh my gosh, every time I said or they wrote it down. It was in the magazine. It was really embarrassing. Made me sound like an idiot. And so we don't do that. Even if you contribute a story, even if you do have some in there or uhs, I take them out. I want you to sound as good as possible. I want other people to sound as good as possible. Um, yeah, I do write when I do interviews. I kind of like to have an idea about what I'm going to ask, but you really don't have to show that to the guest. But you do need to tell them generally what you're going to ask, like what's your experiment about, or how'd you get involved in this, or what's the experimental control and things like that. But you don't really have to follow the script. You need to allow for spontaneity. Um, Generally start with easier questions to help the speaker relax. It kind of annoys me when I hear other interviewers ask long, meandering questions. They should be talking more than you do. You shouldn't have to ask them, where'd you get your degree? You should prepare a little bit of an introduction yourself and be like, oh, I'm interviewing this scientist and they have they got their PhD at such a place, and today they're going to be talking about such a topic. So when you're actually interviewing them, you can get right into the topic. And then truly listen to the guest instead of looking at your script like, what am I going to ask next? Listen to them and try to ask follow-up questions. And so develop a curiosity about that topic and really try to flesh out the material, dig deeper, asking why questions like, okay, you got that result in your experiment. What's your explanation for that? What's going on? And you can even ask them to speculate about implications. And then finally, you can integrate audio clips into the show or into your episode as long as it's from public domain source or it's with permission. C-SPAN, there's some great hearings with scientists in front of the House or the Senate in Washington, D.C., and those are all public domains. You do have to pay 99 cents to get the audio of it, but that's not a bad price. And so you can use C-SPAN recordings. Really, any audio or video produced by government agencies like NASA are public domain. That's why you always see people with NASA t-shirts with the emblem on it, because that emblem is public domain. You don't have to pay anyone to use that emblem. Not true if you have like a Disney World t-shirt, you have to pay copyright on that. When an organization has a press conference, they want journalists to carry it. And so you can use the audio from press conferences like this one is Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists about the Doomsday Clock. And so you can just use the audio from their press conferences. And then Union of Concerned Scientists produces some great podcasts. They have podcasts of their own. It's now ended, unfortunately, but years ago I'd asked them for permission to use them, and they've let me take parts of their podcast. But you still, so regardless of the source that you might use, you still need to acknowledge them. And I'll provide links to the full press conference or what have you on iTunes. This is my studio, although now I'm on a laptop because my computer kind of crashed yesterday trying to upload Zoom. But I use a plug-in microphone. I used to get them at Best Buy. Now I just order them from Amazon. It's a USB plug, and you can get good freestanding microphones like this for $40 or $50. you don't have to spend $200 on this really expensive microphone. I think the quality is pretty good on these. And you'll notice I have two screens. The left one is the audio editing program called Audacity that I hope I have time to show you today. And the right one is my script, but you could just print the script out. Find a quiet place to record so there's no chirping birds or squeaky chairs or air conditioners or airplanes or automobiles. Smaller spaces are better. People talk about recording in a closet. A closet's not good because the walls are too close. You want to be away from the walls so you get less echo. More cushioning like carpets and fabric and furniture is good. Yeah, headsets are fine for recording. Camera and laptop microphones like what I'm using here, they're lower quality, but they're good enough. I've had contributors do that. Position the microphones so that you don't have distracting noises from your mouth or from your teeth. And then I recommend recording the whole 8-minute story or whatever it is all at once, because if you stop and go to lunch, when you come back, your voice has changed. The voice in the room has changed. There are some voice exercises you can do, like vocalizing the scales. So before I record, I sound ridiculous because I'm doing all these voice exercises. Ah, or things like that to loosen up your mouth a little bit. I try to sound as natural as possible. There's nothing more boring than somebody just reading their script. And so you can have a script, but it's really just a crutch. You need to sound like you're talking off the top of your head. I record just 1 or 2 little minute snippets. I listen to it, make sure it sounds all right. If I don't like it, I'll record that snippet again before I move on. I don't edit the story until I'm completely done with it. And then at the end of the story, you should try to record at least 30 seconds, a minute would be better, of just silence. Just sit there in front of the computer and record that silence. Because if there is automobile traffic, or in my room, I have an air conditioning unit, a airflow unit, it's very noisy. And so you can eliminate that background noise if you have silence. And even your body makes a little bit of noise, and you can eliminate that. Oh, you can use a smartphone microphone. I have an iPhone, so I don't know about other kinds of phones, but you can record phone calls or you can record voice memos with that phone. If you want to record a phone interview, when you make the call, there's a little button in the upper left-hand corner for recording it. And if you want to record yourself talking into a smartphone, or you go to a lecture, or you're having a conversation or an interview, you can use voice memo. And then you save that to last night. I finally got into my iPhone iCloud account. You select share, and then you select save. And then using your PC, you can log into that iCloud account, and then you download the recording to your PC. And then Amanda turned me onto this website yesterday called cloudconvert.com. Your phone records in a file that's called an M4A file, which won't work. You've got to convert it to an MP3 or a similar file. Well, WAV is also good. And then you can download that MP3 to your PC and import it into your editing program called Audacity. Yeah, and then Audacity is the software I use to edit my stories. It's also what I use to compose the entire show. It's free of charge to download into a PC computer. If you've got an Apple product, you'd use a different program called GarageBand. So Audacity, it's free of charge, and it doesn't seem to be loaded up with a lot of cookies and things that you don't want. It's one of the most popular sound editing packages around. It's used even by professionals. It's very powerful. It's very adaptable. And it's really got a pretty easy learning curve. It's not too bad. I watched a couple YouTube videos for beginners using Audacity, and I was able to start recording in 15 minutes. And almost every question you have on Audacity, you do a YouTube search, and there's probably somebody who has a video on how to do what you're trying to do. If you do have Apple, you would use GarageBand. This is the basic screen that you look, and if we have time, we can actually get into Audacity today, but we'll just have to see if people have time. But basically, you can record what you want, and um, and then you can, just like a Word document, you can modify parts of it. You can modify parts of your recording by highlighting a certain region. Like this region here is highlighted. Maybe it's a little lower volume than what's on the right. And so I can get in there and increase the volume a little bit. So it's a very flexible uh, software. And we can try it later if we have time. I'm going to finish up on 3 quotes by science communicators. First, Neil deGrasse Tyson, astrophysicist. He said, this was just last year, journalists do a great service in building bridges between science and society, but I think the world would be better off if more scientists did that as well. Um, Carl Sagan said, moving the thing here, scientists should tithe 10% of their time on public education in science. This should be distinct from teaching courses at colleges or universities. And then, see if I can put this out of the way. You can see the third quote there. I can't quite read it to you, but this was just last year. Had a former head of NIH, he just retired. And so my question is, why won't you join them? Well, I think you should try to be a science communicator. And if you don't start your own podcast, feel free to join us on ours in bringing science to the public. Here's my contact information, my email, phone. You can call or text. We do have a presence on Facebook. Just search for Bench Talk, The Week in Science. There's our QR code for going to the website. I don't know if there's any questions.
I think we do have just a couple minutes if you want to open up Audacity, Dave. I don't know if anybody does
Okay,
have
yeah,
questions, but I would love to look at that
cool.
for a few
Yeah.
minutes with you.
First, I prepared this slide. This is what, once you download the program to your PC and you call it up, you'll get something. Well, this already has some material recorded on it, but first I'll just point out some of the buttons. The first button you want to play with is specify what microphone, because your PC has a microphone, maybe your laptop does. And so you've got to specify which microphone you're using. And then with the red circle there, you can adjust the volume of the microphone. And then there's the speaker, because you need to hear back. Your computer has speakers, but maybe you want to use a different speaker. So you got to specify that and then change the volume. And then to record, you just hit the record button and it'll start recording everything you say. To stop, you hit the stop button. To hear what you've just recorded, you hit the play button. So it's kind of like a VCR. You can control, it is done in stereo, so you can hear the left and the right speaker, and you can adjust the volume on those, but I always just keep them equal on both of them. And then this blue line you see is the actual recording. You can see this recording is more than 17 minutes long. And then here's very useful. You can cut, copy, and paste. The scissors is for cutting a segment of the talk, and I can show you that in just a second. You can copy a section if you want to put it somewhere else in the talk. And then you can use the paste button, just like with Word. And then you can zoom in and out of the recording with the zoom buttons. And let's see if I can call up How can I get Audacity? Oops.
I think you should stop, share,
Oh, so
and
let me
then
get out of this
you
PowerPoint.
have to
Oh, there you
reshare
go.
it
Share.
window. Yeah.
And then there's Audacity. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me just record the Kentucky Academy of Science. Why don't you join? Okay, so that's our recording. And then I said, have a little bit of silence. Oh, there's a little bit of silence. So it's a 15-second recording to play back what it sounds like.
Oh, we don't hear it, Dave. I think it's because when you share, you have to share the audio.
Okay, how do I do that? Let's see.
Probably stop the share and then reshare it and click the button that says share audio.
Okay, so
I messed that up
um,
last week on when I was on. It's
oh,
easy to
let's see
forget to
here.
click it.
So I need to shut down.
Stop sharing this one.
Let's see, I
Um,
can't get the actual Zoom meeting here. I guess I've got to, this meeting is being recorded.
at the top of your window, do you have a button that says stop share?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next time when you click to share,
And then is there a button for share sound?
share sound. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now let's see if I can get back to, can you hear that?
You have to share it first, share the window.
I think, oh, I need to share that window. Um, let's see. Share. Oh, so go back to,
Okay.
go back to the beginning. Can you hear that?
No,
No?
it's not coming through for some reason. That's okay though. If you want to demonstrate like how to take out the
Where?
background noise or whatever you were gonna show us.
Shoot. Oh. Um,
It's okay.
um, screen sharing has stopped. Oh, yeah. So now, well, shoot. Let me pull up another one here then. Except, let's see, share sound. Uh, well, heck. There's Audacity. You are sharing. Okay. Can you see that?
Yep, we can see it.
And can you hear it?
I don't hear
No.
it. No, it's okay.
Okay. Well,
It
well,
worked
too bad. But
yesterday briefly, but that's okay.
anyway, yeah, I don't. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I would like to kind of meaningless. So I need to close down again.
Or if there's anything like one little thing you could show us, we don't have to listen to it, but just,
Yeah,
work in the controls if there's something you wanted
yeah.
to show in the last few minutes.
Let me well now I need to get back
I like
in.
to see it. I like your circles and arrows. It helps me, even though I've used it,
Yeah.
it kind of demystifies it a little bit to see that dashboard.
Um, but now, okay, there's Audacity. Yeah. Can you see that? No, you can't see that.
Yeah, we see it.
Oh, you can? Yeah.
Mhm.
So anyway, can you hear it?
No,
Well, anyway,
that's
hopefully
okay.
you can hear me speak, but you record some things, and then say, for instance, these are two sentences that are too far apart. You can highlight it and then just hit the backspace button or the delete button on your keyboard. You can bring things together. You can move pieces apart. So here's a part that I can cut out and move the cursor to before that and paste it in like that. You can eliminate background sound you see there. Well, let's see. You can amplify by going into amplify and make it louder. And then you can see the background noise there. It's very, there's a very thick line there. So you could highlight a quiet part and eliminate it by that would represent your noise profile. And then you can highlight the whole thing and apply that to that recording. And now you've eliminated all the background noise. Not all of it, but a good part of it. And so it's those are really the main functions that you do. And then once you maybe that's a little snippet, you can just start recording and start saying your next paragraph or what have you. I don't know if anybody has a specific question about Audacity.
I think it's really helpful. It's great to know there's something that's free that's really easy for people to use.
Yeah, even if you're not a podcaster, it's very useful to be able to make audio like this. It's really a good program, and the learning curve is very minimal. But then it gets very powerful too. Like for instance, I have music on our show, and so I can have another track where I have music, and they can overlap one another, and that's really kind of neat. Of course,
Well,
I don't want to.
this has
Yeah,
been really great. We are about at the top of the hour. Um, I appreciate so much, Dave, that you were able to share this with us. I'm looking forward to getting it up on our website and helping people get trained up to contribute to the podcast or start their own if they want to do something different. And I know Melissa's excited too to do more with KS on
yeah,
audio. So
Yes.
and it was nice meeting you
Definitely,
guys.
especially after today's very helpful session. We did post a post-event survey in the chat, and we'll post that with the recording as well. So please, just if you've participated in this session today, let us know your thoughts so that we know better how to serve you in the future. But yes, very much thank you, Dave, for sharing this and the insightful information. I think you've shared a lot of really good information and kind of opened our eyes to the wide variety of things that you're willing to put on the podcast and the radio show. And I myself was jotting down some ideas of some possible collaborations that I hadn't maybe thought of before to kind of help broaden that experience for our listeners. So it was very informative, and I think you've also shared how accessible it is with the free software and all the variety of tools, being a low cost operation. So really you just kind of have to dive in and get started. And we're hoping to help our KAS scientists across the state jump into this a little bit more as another venue to share our science.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think the country needs us to speak up and participate.
all right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Elle.